you need to do, you've got until December to get all of those done. I have not been getting them posted soon enough for you guys to access, so you've got the rest of the semester to finish those as well. So here we go for our final presentation tonight. I don't see any faces that I don't recognize. Am I correct in that? Pretty sure. So Chris, you're the only one that needs to sign a waiver eventually. So when we catch your pearly whites on the camera.
Get my good side.
Yeah. So Chris and I were classmates back in pharmacy school back a couple months ago anyhow, yeah. And then as it turned out, he needed a place to stay in Ada occasionally when he would lecture to the pharmacy students. And I would let him stay at our place for a while. And as it turned out, he and his wife used to live in the house that we subsequently bought. And it's just a fascinating intertwining of circumstances. So anyhow, I think Chris has quite a powerful story to share with us tonight. And I've known Chris for a very, very long time, and you don't find people much better than him. So anyhow, let's just jump in to see what you already know about Chris's topic. You guys know the drill, so I almost don't need to do this, but why are these not coming on? How are you guys doing?
I didn't write them.
I know, but why? Oh, I know why. Milks, you idiot. All right, I need to reset this. Is what I need to do.
On these questions.
No. It's just I need to reset.
Well, I bet it's Really don't get too excited about the questions. But he said I had to have questions, so we're going to do questions. So.
This was the one thing that I did not check because I was doing so well with the PowerPoints, but apparently not so much here. All right, go. Now, let's hope. Come on, yes. All right, so this is from last week. Chris, what do you think? Here you go. What do you think?
Sure, put me on the spot, and everything.
There you go. There's your clicker. This is anonymous. This is anonymous.
I can't find the sports channel at home with a clicker. What am I going to do here? And everything.
So what do you guys remember? I remember there were a couple that chose one that I thought you were just jacking me around.
I know what I would do, but I'm a recovering person, so I'm going to take it home. No.
Oh, look at that. No. We're right at 100%. See, I knew you guys were messing with me last week.
That's right.
All righty. So that was the practice one here. These are for real now.
Okay. Oh, those are the
one out of every how many pharmacists have a chemical dependency issue sometime during her or his career? We're ranging from 50% to 25%. Or no.
Oh,
yes.
Oh,
1 out of 2 would be 50%, and 1 out of 8. That would be 12.5%.
Yeah.
All right, I got 15 votes in. Let's see how they're looking right here. Okay, so there's a little bit of a range. We got some material to work with there.
All right.
According to a recent UF survey, what percentage of pharmacists attempt suicide when caught for drug diversion? It's a timely topic. Lima News, pardon me to Allison. Lima News ran a suicide article. I think it was either this morning or yesterday morning. So, what do we think we got here? All right. Some of us think it's really substantial. Others are down at the other end. So
nice range. Okay.
Yeah, so that gives us something to talk about as well. Theft of a drug is what degree felony in the state of Ohio? Or perhaps you don't think it's a felony at all. Perhaps you want D, saying that it's only a misdemeanor. else? 14? We'll go with 14. Okay, we're across the board there a little bit, third and fourth being our top choices. And 1 out of 14 of us think that it's a misdemeanor. Okay. True or false? I don't know, do you guys like true or false questions or not? I never use them typically because it's too easy for a student to find one little detail that then I have to give them credit for. But it's a great question to engage discussion with. So, complete abstinence is necessary to cure chemical dependency.
He tells me this, you can use true and false.
No,
but
no,
he doesn't use them.
For this,
oh,
but for
this.
testing purposes, it's tough. The students will eat you alive for
They
true
will,
false.
yeah.
So.
But I still use them. There's some of them. No.
14, let's see what we got here. All right, a little bit of discussion that we can entertain. The course that Chris teaches here at UF is replicated across the state, but in how many of the 7 colleges of pharmacy? All right, again, opportunity for some learning there as well. All right, Chris, I'm going to turn the PowerPoint off.
Yeah, because I don't have one. So.
I'm going to turn my microphone off, and Chris is going to take it from here. Chris and I do go way back, and he's got a fascinating story to tell. Chris, it's
all right. You hear me okay back? Everybody hear me okay? All right, thank you, and everything. Well, first of all, Michael has already introduced me, but allow me to introduce myself again. My name is Chris, and I'm a long-term recovering addict. Now, this was a 12-step meeting, such as Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. The appropriate response from you all would be, "Hi, Chris," and then I'd feel all nice and warm and fuzzy and ready to share. And now this is kind of a good day to feel kind of warm and fuzzy, don't you think so? Let's try that again. Hi, everybody. My name's Chris, and I'm a long-term recovering addict. All right, you guys did good. Everything. So, I introduce myself that way because it's very important that I remember that. That has taken me to some places when I forgot that I never really wanted to go. And that's what I'm here to talk about tonight, is my journey into addiction, recovery, relapse, and then how I got to be here, how I get to teach a course on chemical dependency here in the College of Pharmacy. It's very important that I remember that, and I want to teach that. Now, I'm going to ask, because you have to realize my memory is very bad. I say it's because I might have fried some brain cells, not because I'm getting old. Michael's getting old, but I'm not getting old. You know, you're talking about the true and false questions, and everything. And I don't know if you remember, but we had one pharmaceutics test. We both went to Ohio Northern. Shoemaker was the professor. He gave us 50 questions, okay, all true and false. 50 questions, all true and false, and 49 were true. Blew your mind totally. It's like you could just see it in the room. You're just sitting there and you're kind of looking around at everybody and everything. Oh, there's got to be some false ones in there somewhere and everything. I don't think he ever gave that test again, but and everything. So let me ask you this, and I know students, anybody take the chemical dependency course? Did anybody? Okay, one, because you've heard my story, so it's good. You can hear it again. We'll try it, that kind of thing. But that's what I said. That's what we're gonna talk about tonight. I'm going to talk. You're going to listen, actually. Let's talk about that true and false one. It was a trick question. I'm going to go through and I'm going to pop up and I'm going to throw these out, and then when you click them again, you'll get them all right, some of them, because that's the way I'm going to do it. But now, true and false one. It was a bit of a trick question. okay? Because you would think complete abstinence is necessary, and it would be, but the key word to that is cure. There is no cure for this disease of chemical dependency at this time. And it's a disease. American Medical Association has recognized it as a disease for like over 50, 75 years now. It can be very successfully treated, but we don't have a cure for it. So I am still an addict. Okay, long-term recovering, but I'm still an addict. So that's why I have always got to introduce myself that way, and I do. Anytime I do a class or a presentation, I try and stay focused in the moment. Let's talk about my story, my journey, if you will. I come from a very normal family, not the least bit dysfunctional. My father, who passed away in January, might have had a drink of alcohol at the holidays, maybe a beer in the summer, once or twice a year. That was it. My mother doesn't drink at all. I've never seen her have a drink. I have one brother. My brother is also a pharmacist. He practices up in the state of Maine. Why, I don't know, but he works in a nuclear pharmacy. He's been that for like 20-some years, and they don't even have a narcotic in their inventory. I mean, I tell you, what fun is that? You know, you don't even have any good stuff in here. But I do kid him. I tell him, I said, well, I know if you was to start abusing stuff, because you'd glow in the dark and we'd have that figured out real good, you know. My journey into this was a little bit harder to spot than that. So all that to tell you, a very normal family. Okay? So, you know, we don't have a problem there. Although I did have some uncles that would probably qualify for Alcoholics Anonymous had they lived longer, so there is a genetic factor. I was one of those kids in high school that probably, you know, probably got on everybody's nerves a little bit. I was the good kid. I never got into trouble. I really never did. I was the classic people pleaser, and that's important in my story. I wanted everybody to like me, and I was a perfectionist. If I couldn't do it to the best of that it could be done, I didn't want to do it. All right, I mean, I went to a small high school. We had like 100 in my graduating class. I mean, I was not good at sports. I was very clumsy, so I didn't do sports. I have no music talent whatsoever. I can't even play a radio. It's that bad, so that's not. I really wish I would have done drama, but I was too scared to get on stage. Again, I didn't, you know, I didn't think I was that good. Today I do community theater and other one-man shows, and I love it, so I wish I would have done that sooner. But I was good academically. I graduated second in my class, so that was the area that I went. I was in all the science clubs, the history clubs, student government, and if I was in a club, then I darn well was going to be president or vice president, because that was something I could excel in, and I was good at, and so that was the image that I had. That's all to tell you that I had this image, okay, the good kid. Did not drink in high school. Now, that was back in my day. When you turned 18 in Ohio, you could buy 3.2 beer, okay, 3.2% beer. Very weak. You had to drink a ton of it to even begin to get drunk. And guys would do that when they turned 18. But I was the designated driver. Anytime, you know, the guys in my class, when they turned 18, they'd go out and they'd try and get drunk on this stuff, and I would drive them home. I was the good kid. I wanted, you know, the perfect image, okay, if you will. So I graduated from high school, and I did not decide to go into pharmacy school till about 2 weeks before I graduated from high school. It was a lot easier to get in back then than it is today. But so I decided my plan was this. I would go to this other school while I was already accepted, enrolled. I would go there 1 year because they didn't have pharmacy school. And then I would transfer to Ohio Northern and finish out my other 4 years there. It was a 5-year program there. So that's what I did. And it worked, and I was able to make that work. But that's important because I went away to this other school for 1 year. All right? And there's nobody at this school from my hometown. Nobody knows me there. Nobody's going to report back home. Suddenly, for the first time in like forever, I don't have to worry about this image because I'm only going to be there 1 year, and then I'm leaving. So I'm not going to join all these clubs because I'm not coming back. I don't care if the professors like me or know me or whatever. I'm not coming back. So it gave me kind of this free shot for the year. And I did what a lot of college freshmen do. I experimented with alcohol there, and I liked it, and I partied pretty hard. And I didn't have to worry about the image, and it felt so good. It's like, this was great. And I partied pretty hard. I mean, fortunately, it did not affect my grades enough that, everything transferred. I went on with my plan, if you will. So now, after a year, I transferred to Ohio Northern, and now I am there, and it suddenly is this image again. Because now I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to be a pharmacist, and you can't be screwing around, okay? I got to be here 4 years. I'm back to this thing of everybody's got to like me. I got to get these good grades. So I become the super good kid again. 4 years there. And this is the 70s, okay, now. I had opportunities all over the place, drugs and alcohol. I lived in a fraternity house for a year. That house would have put Animal House to shame if you ever saw that movie. We had 1 or 2 of everybody in that movie. We did. So bad they condemned it. They tore the house down. It's not even there anymore. They tore this, I have to tell you the story. They tore this house down about 5 years ago. Right? They condemned it before that, the FICAP house. And so before they tear it down, it's been condemned for a year or 2, and nobody's there. And so I kind of want to see it one more time before they tear it down, And they've got the tape up, they've got everything, it's all. So I go to security there, and is there any way I could get in and look around? And they go, well, since it's condemned, we're really not supposed to, but you work here and that kind of thing. So they let me in. And I walk in, and it didn't look anything different than when I lived there 25 years ago. It's like they should have condemned it then. But I didn't do that kind of thing, all right? I married my high school sweetheart. Everybody say, when I had 2 years of pharmacy school left. And we lived up there in Ada. The second year in the upstairs of the house that Mike bought later. The upstairs was great. This family that had it rented it to law students. And there was like 3 rooms. We moved in there for a year. My wife kept their little boy. That's how we paid the rent for them. They lived downstairs. We lived upstairs. There was like 3 of everything. 3 beds, 3 couches, three tables, because they each had a room and they shared the kitchen. So that was like, so that was really nice. And we did that, and we lived there. And then we went back home, and I got a real job. And so I'm practicing pharmacy. And we're now into the practice for several years. And as I practice more and more, and I'm pouring my heart and my soul into pharmacy, because that's the way we were taught. You're going to be this pharmacist, and this is this image that, and you've got to go this extra mile, and you got to do all this stuff, and which, it's noble, and you got to do that. But along the way, they didn't show you really how to take care of yourself. And as my career progressed, I got more and more, I just didn't like pharmacy. I was like, I couldn't make everybody happy. Not everybody liked me. I had to tell people stuff that made them unhappy. Your insurance card isn't working, or, there's no refills on this, or you can't get this. And then they call you names, and they're mean and nasty. And I got so over the years, despite trying all that image and trying to maintain that, I got burned out. I didn't like it. And I'm talking 10 years, okay, 10 years into the career. And I'm a very unhappy person at this point. I am very unhappy. What else am I going to do? This is what I trained for. I never thought about doing anything else. I just know that I was not happy going to work. I really wasn't. And so I'm now about 10 years into my pharmacy career when I became active in my chemical career. Some dates I remember, others I don't very well. I mean, I don't remember exactly when I started picking up and using drugs. What year it was, I know about when it was based on the age of my son and where I was. But I do remember the very first incident, the time that I picked up. And it was so innocent, it really was. I worked in a pharmacy. It was a busy 3-man, 3 pharmacists, private-owned pharmacy. We were quite busy. It was a Monday. I was working the late shift. And one of the duties of the pharmacist that worked the late shift was to clean off all the counters at the end of the day, because we didn't have baskets. We just made a mess. Stuff was everywhere. So it had been a typical Monday. It was just a rotten day. I had a headache. Nobody had been nice. Nothing had gone right. It was a train wreck of a Monday. It was just awful. And I got this awful headache, and it's about 8 o'clock. The tech had just gone home. I got another hour or so to go. I'm putting stuff back on the shelf. I've got all these bottles in my hand, and I'm putting it back. And there is this bottle of Percodan, which is a very strong narcotic. And I'm thinking to myself, I bet that would fix my headache. And I took a couple. Just that simple. Didn't think about it being addictive, didn't think about being a strong narcotic, didn't think about breaking the law, didn't think that I didn't have a narcotic, a prescription for it. I know what I'm doing. Here's a couple, boom, I'm going to take them and get rid of this headache. It was just that simple. And about 10, 15 minutes later, I got this most fantastic feeling I had ever had in my life. It was this warm, fuzzy glow. I mean, I was just suddenly enlightened. I felt so fantastic. And suddenly I was like super pharmacist. I could do everything. And that last hour, I mean, I'm just putting everything away. I'm fixing everybody's problems that come in. I am just feeling great. This is like, honestly, the best feeling I had ever had in my life. Better than food, better than sex, better than anything I had ever had in my life was this feeling. I went home that night. I got a great night's sleep. It was great. And that was it. That was it until probably about a month later. Another Monday. Only this time, it's again a crappy day. I hate Mondays, by the way. It's a crappy day, but I don't have a headache this time. But I remember how good that narcotic made me feel. And so this time, I'm now taking 2 of those for that good feeling. And I am chasing that feeling. And I would chase that feeling forever, almost, it felt like. That was it. And I am off and running in my chemical dependency career. I am taking everything I can find. If it was mood altering, I pretty much tried it. Just taking stuff out of stock. I'm changing jobs. I'm kind of moving on so that, can't take too much here, then you got to move on. And I'm just chasing the high. And it would feel so good. And I had my favorites. I had stuff I didn't like. But again, if it was mood altering, I would try it. And this will go on for several years. This is not just a short-term thing. Now, you can't keep doing this without some side effects, some symptoms, if you will. And I began to get those. I mean, I would get really drowsy. I would fall asleep at the table. I would, some physical things. I wouldn't, my eyes were droopy, different things. And But nobody ever thought about it being drugs. They all think, I'm working too hard. And they're telling me, Chris, you gotta back off. You're working too hard. You're falling asleep. And that just stroked, oh, I must be a really good pharmacist then because I'm just, I'm working really hard and they think I'm tired and that kind of thing. And I keep chasing the dream. I keep chasing the high. Nobody, again, I'm the good person. Nobody ever suspect that I am stealing drugs and I'm using them. Nobody. I share this next instance with you because to me this represents the insanity of this disease and where it will take us. And I share this, by the way, the students hear this story on the first day of class. So they know where I'm coming from. So this is what everybody hears, more or less. I've been taking all these pills now for several years, and I developed, as a result of this, a bleeding ulcer. A very bad bleeding ulcer. I'm hospitalized 3 times in 1 year for a bleeding ulcer. And everybody's trying to figure out what it is and why I'm doing this and all stress and all this and that. Well, the 3rd time, I'm at home, day off, my wife is home, and I start bleeding again at home. And I'm losing all kinds of blood. Now, I should backtrack and tell you this other thing, that in addition to now the pain pills that I'm hooked on, the thing with narcotics is they'll make you drowsy during the day, but you can't sleep at night. So I've got insomnia really bad. So what do? As a good pharmacist, I start taking sleeping pills to go along with them. And again, I don't have a prescription for them, but I'm just taking them. So then I promptly become hooked on the sleeping pills as well. And I'm up to like 4 or 5 a night to get through the night. A couple at bedtime, a couple more at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe one more at 5 o'clock. Got to get my sleep. So, now we're back to this 3rd bleeding episode. I'm bleeding at home. I'm vomiting blood. I'm bleeding rectally. I'm losing blood every which way you can. My wife, we got to go to the hospital. And the hospital's about 45 minutes away from where I live. So she's calling the doctor. She's going to take me. We're getting everything all set. She's over there. What am I doing? I am bleeding profusely, but what am I doing? What is my priority? I'm in the bathroom. I am into my secret stash where I've got my sleeping pills hidden. And I'm trying to figure out how many sleeping pills I need to take with me to the hospital to get through this. Because if anybody knows, if anybody's ever been in the hospital, it's the worst place in the world to try and sleep. Those nurses are banging and crashing around all night. It's awful. Now, I know I can get by without the pain pills for a few days. It won't be fun, but I can do it. But I got to have my sleep. I'm going to die if I don't have my sleep. So I know about how long I'm going to be in the hospital because I've been through this before. I know about how many sleeping pills I'm going to need because, mind you, I've never had a prescription. So even if I could get the doctor to give me, a sleeping pill in the hospital, even if I could convince him, he's only going to give me one. And I need way more than that. So I'm counting them out in my hand, how many I think I'm going to need. Because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these with me. So what do? I figure this out. I take these sleeping pills, and I put them in my sock. I put the sock on my foot. Because I know eventually, in the hospital, when I get up to my room, there's going to be that nice little locker. There's going to be my socks. There's going to be my shoes. There's going to be my sleeping pills. So that's what I do. That's the insane. I'm bleeding. I'm not doing well. But my priority is the drugs. So I get the socks and shoes on, and we go to the hospital. And I don't remember the trip to the hospital because I've lost so much blood. I'm almost unconscious. I don't remember going into the ER. I don't remember any of that. The only thing I do remember is I made sure I was the one that took off my socks and shoes so nobody would find those pills. And sure enough, when I get up to the room, there they are. I don't know how many units of blood they had to give me. It was several. Major transfusion. I had lost that much. I'm dying, essentially, but I don't care. It's all about the pills. That's what my life had become. Well, 3 GI bleeds in a year, that's pretty bad, so they're going to say, okay, we got to figure out what's doing this. So they do surgery. They open me up, and they're looking at my stomach and my, everything. They're trying to figure this out. Now, that was kind of cool, too, because then I got a morphine pump, and I'm hitting that button every minute, that was kind of cool. But, again, I think like an addict because that's what I am. Anyway, the surgeon comes in after the surgery, and he goes, well, says, I got to figure it out. We know what the problem is now. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, boy, here we go. I'm busted now. And he says, well, the opening at the bottom of your stomach was abnormally small. It was kind of scarred over. So we kind of opened it up and took out part of the lower part of your stomach and stitched everything back up, and you're going to be just fine. And I'm going, wow. He doesn't know. Now, I'm not a stupid person, okay? I mean, I do a lot of stupid things, but I'm not a stupid person. And I know deep down inside what the problem is. It's all the pills. That's what's causing the problem. But he tells me there's something else. That gives my addicted mind the green light. It goes, okay, you're back to using. It wasn't the pills. You're okay. Keep right on going. And I did for about 2 more years. I mean, that's insanity. That is pure. The drugs change the way I think. They really do. So, all right, a couple more years, same thing. Finally, it all comes to a head in November of 1993. Shortly, 22 years ago, I would probably be in treatment today, but okay. Anyway, I'm working for a small pharmacy and a grocery store. I thought they had pretty poor bookkeeping system, but apparently it was better than what I thought. I go in, I had the weekend off, go in on a Monday again. I hate Mondays. The inspector from the State Board of Pharmacy is there. And he says to me, when I come in, I have the late shift, we've got drugs missing here. Do you know anything about it? I go, no, why would I know anything about it? My heart's dropping, my chest is about to explode, but why? Anyway, long story short is, after about 10, 15 minutes, I confessed, yes, it was me, I'm taking this stuff, which he knew all along. They had secret video cameras of me taking stuff, and they had me dead to rights. So I fill out this statement, and I get fired from that job, and I'm gonna lose my license. I got to go through all this ordeal with this inspector, and then he says to me, okay, now I want to follow you home, because he says, I want to get the stuff out of your house. I got to get all the stuff you got hidden. So he follows me home. I get home, there's my wife. She's off, she's working in the front yard. I still remember that walk. I walk up to the front door, and I got to tell her that, A, I'm a drug addict. B, I just got fired from my job. And C, this stranger wants to go through our house. Not exactly a red letter day in our relationship, let me tell you. Now, in this regard, I was fortunate for a Monday, and I will tell you this, in impaired pharmacists, we don't stockpile much stuff. I mean, why should we? We go to the candy store every day, it's right there. We normally don't have a whole bunch at home, and I didn't. It was after the weekend, I'd taken everything. So he didn't find very much stuff. So he leaves, and we sit there kind of in silence and stunned, and we call my parents, and we call our minister, and then we call our doctor, and Doc says, I want to see you here at the end of the day. So I go to his office at 5 o'clock, and he says, you got to get in treatment right away, because those withdrawal symptoms are going to set in, and they're going to be nasty. And I said, well, I don't have any insurance now. I don't have a whole lot of money. He said, no, you don't have a choice. You got to go tonight. He said, I'll loan you the money if you need to go, but you got to go. I mean, that's the kind of doc I have. I didn't have to borrow his money, but I did. I went to Shepherd Hill Treatment Center in Newark there that night. So I went from a practicing pharmacist in the morning to a busted drug addict in treatment that night. That pharmacist working in that pharmacy, my partner, he did what he had to do. He found stuff missing, and he had to turn me in. And he probably saved my life. He did save my life, because I was on a road to destruction. So he saved my life. I would spend 3 months in treatment. I learned a lot. I learned I had a disease. I learned I wasn't a stupid, weak-willed, immoral person. I was a sick person who needed to get well. I learned I wasn't the only pharmacist that had ever done this. There was a whole bunch out there. Yeah, like about 1 out of 6. Yeah, about that number. 1 out of 6 out of us. That's the national average, 1 out of 6. I learned I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to maintain an image. I don't have to please everybody. You know that 10% of the people you know don't like you. That's a fact. 10% of the people you know don't like you. And so I learned I didn't have to please everybody. It was okay if you don't like me, well, okay, So I learned a lot. I worked really hard on my recovery. Long story short, I had a board hearing. I got my license back. I was off about 16 months. And so I get my license back. I'm on a monitoring contract for the next 5 years, which means I've got random drug screens. I'm going to 12-step meetings, 3 a week. I'm treating my disease. So get my license back, get back to work very quickly. Life gets back, over the next several years, life gets back to normal. And it's going well. And, my wife and I are doing well. And I will tell you this, and I should tell you this right now. I'm very blessed to have this woman in my life. I mean, if I was to go home tonight, and by the way, we're still together. We just celebrated 40 years. If I was to go home tonight and all my stuff was on the front porch, and she told me to get lost, I don't think that's going to happen because I took out the trash before I left, and I did that, I don't think that's, but if that was to happen, I couldn't say a word. I did, well, not the things I put her through, because you see, my story's not done yet, oh no. The things I put her through, nobody should have to go through. So I'm thankful for that every day, that she's with me. 5 years, this monitoring contract, random drug screens, I'm doing great. And then the contract is up. Suddenly I don't have to pee in the bottle anymore. I don't have to go to all the meetings anymore. So what happens? I began to get complacent. I stopped treating my disease. I don't go to meetings anymore. I cut back gradually, and then I stop altogether. I don't call my sponsor. I don't do anything because I think I got this thing whipped. So what happens? The drugs start talking to me again. They really do. What are they saying? They're saying like, well, maybe you really weren't that bad. Or wouldn't you like to just try it one time to see what it felt like? And then you can go back to being in recovery. You know how to do that. Or, you can take a couple and you'll be fine. It's not going to kick things up again. Yeah, it does. Long story short, they kept talking to me. And after about 7.5 years of sobriety, I picked up again. I relapsed. And I am off and running again, and I don't care anymore. I just like the feeling. I just want to feel good. I know that I'm probably going to lose my license if I get caught again. I don't care. I just want to feel good. Oh, yeah, I'm being more careful now because people are watching and they know what I'm looking for. Look like some signs and symptoms I'd use late at night and all this kind of stuff. But I'm just going and going again because I don't care. And so that brings me to January 20th, 2004. January 20th, 2004 is my sobriety date. Since that date, I have not put a mood-altering substance into my body that I wasn't supposed to. If I make it to this January 20th, one day at a time, I will have 12 years. More sobriety than I have strung together in probably 30 years. It's a Friday. I'm working in this pharmacy. I'm working for a chain I've been using now for a couple of years, maybe more. District manager walks in. He says, we've got some drugs missing, and we don't know where they're going, but we're going to drug test everybody. I'm going like, okay. Now, there's no way I'm going to pass a drug test because I just had a handful of Vicodin before he came in, you know. But I don't say anything. Friday afternoon, I go with everybody else. We go pee in the bottle. Okay. It's my weekend to work. So I'm working, and I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, and I'm thinking. What am I going to do? My wife had said she'll leave me if this ever happened again. What am I going to do? They're going to find out. I don't say anything to anybody. Sunday night, I call my district manager. I said, hey, I want to talk to you first thing Monday morning before the store opens. Now, that tips him off right there. He kind of knows what's going on. But he says, okay. So I meet him Monday morning before the store opens, and I tell him, yes, that it's me that's taken the drugs. It was me. You're going to find it out. Can you get me some help? And he said, well, let me see what I can do. So he leaves. I open up the pharmacy, and I'm working. He comes back middle of the morning with the security people. That's not good. Bottom line is, it's now too late. They're not interested in helping me. It's too late. They just want rid of me. They take me back to the back, and we do the whole thing again. I get fired. They're going to turn me into the board, the whole bit. And then they say, we're going to take you down to the jail, and we're going to prosecute you. Now, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because you see, I'm not going to call my wife from jail and tell her we're going all through this again. I'm not going to do that. So being the good addict that I am, I proceed to pull one more con job. I say to them, can you at least let me go home and tell my wife in person? I don't want to call her. Can you at least do that for me? I mean, I have been a good employee for you. And they go, all right. We'll meet back at the jail in an hour and a half. But you go home and you tell her. And they bought it. And they let me walk out of that pharmacy by myself, get in my car, and leave. Because they don't understand the disease. And that's not sour grapes. That's part of what we train here. Because, see, you never leave anybody alone. Because, you see, I had no intention of going home and telling my wife, oh, no. I had decided at that point that the world was better off without Chris. And I'm going to commit suicide. Because nobody needs me. I'm a loser. My wife will be better off with everybody. The world is better off without me. So I start driving. And I'm driving away, and I want to get as far away as I can. Because I don't want them to see this, like, here's this hotel where Chris killed himself, and you got to drive by it every day. I'm not going to do that. I drive for an hour and a half. And I tell you, folks, it was the strangest drive I've ever had, because it was like an out-of-body experience. And I've never had one before, and I've never really had one since. But it's like I was on the outside of the car, looking in, watching me drive to kill myself. That's what it was like. I drove for an hour and a half because I thought after an hour and a half and I don't show up at the police station, they're going to put out an all-points bulletin for me and track me down and all that. So I got to get off the road at an hour and a half. Turns out, I found out later, when I didn't show up, they just all went home. They knew where I lived. They'll get me tomorrow. But I didn't know that. So I drive for an hour and a half. I get a hotel room, pay cash. Then I got to trace my credit card. I watch TV. It was actually in my district manager's hometown, this hotel. I thought that was poetic justice. I go into the room. I write a suicide note. And then I proceed to take 90 Ambien 10 milligram tablets. whole bottle that I'd stolen. And that's a pretty powerful overdose because I'm serious. I am not messing around. I'm not messing around. I will be one of those 38% pharmacists that attempt suicide when they get caught. Almost 2 out of 5. Somewhere that night, and I do not remember this, I obtained a box cutter. I slit my wrist as well. I was serious. Meanwhile, back home, my wife doesn't have a clue. I don't come home at the usual time. You know, I had the early shift, so I'm coming home pretty early. So she calls the pharmacy and she says, hey, is Chris there? No. Well, he's not home. Was he going to go work at another store? This was a chain. Now, at the store at this point, they don't know everything that's happened. All they know is I've just left early. No, he left early. We don't know where he was gone. Okay. So my wife is home, getting concerned. I don't come home. So it's January. The roads were kind of snowy. Maybe I slid off somewhere. So she calls some friends and they go out looking for me. But of course they don't find me. All evening, she doesn't know where I'm at. Then, about closing time, before the store closes, she calls them again. Are you sure Chris didn't say where he's gone? Because he's not home and I don't know where he's at. Now, by this time, they do know what's happened at the store, but they don't want to be the ones to tell her. So they say, we'll have somebody call you. So they hang up. They call the district manager, and they say, hey, you got to call Chris's wife. He's disappeared. She doesn't know where he's at, and she doesn't have a clue as to what's going on. So at about 10 o'clock that night, that's how my wife finds out everything that's happened. My district manager calls her and tells her the whole story. And she still doesn't know where I'm at. Nobody does. So they call the sheriff. He comes to our house in the middle of the night. They put out a missing persons report. He's asking her questions like, well, do I have a gun? Would I commit suicide? Where would I go? She's got friends and neighbors. They're out 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning looking like at hunting cabins and every place that I might have gone looking for me. All night long, she goes without knowing where I'm at. Can you imagine that? All the next morning, she doesn't know where I'm at. There were a lot of people at my house, and I will tell you this right now, and I own this proudly. There were a lot of prayers went up that night, and that's why I'm standing here today. Absolutely. All the next morning, not a clue. Don't know where I'm at. Meanwhile, back in the hotel, finally about 2 o'clock, the maid comes because I haven't checked out, no pun intended, and she finds me. I'm covered in blood. They get an ambulance there. They take me to the hospital. Of course, they tell the sheriff in that county. He's got the missing persons report. Long story short, about 3:30, 4 o'clock that day, sheriff comes back to our house, says, we found Chris. He did try to commit suicide, but he is alive. So nearly 24 hours, she doesn't have a clue what's going on. Doesn't have a clue. That's what I'm talking about. You know, why I'm blessed that she did not leave me, because she certainly could have. So I'm in the ER. They sew up my wrists. It's too late to put my stomach. They take me to ICU. I'm reunited with her. They send me to the psych ward for a few days because of the suicide attempt. And they're asking me questions like, do you hear voices? Are they telling you to hurt yourself? Well, anyway, long story short, I get out of there. I get back home. I do lose my license. They suspend my license. I go to treatment again. And it's about a year later that I have my board hearing. I'm pretty sure I'm fighting an uphill battle because pharmacy board in the state of Ohio is very, 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 very punitive. They will tell you that themselves. Basically, they will give you one shot, and if you relapse, you're done. But I did have a board hearing. I felt that was necessary to do that. I ended up losing 5-4. Close vote, but doesn't matter. They decided that a pharmacy is not the place I need to be, and they might be right. So, all right, now what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, several people said, well, you ought to go up to Ohio Northern and see if there's anything there you could do. No, I don't want to do that. I'm a loser. They're not going to want to do anything. Yeah, you ought to go talk to somebody. Finally, my higher power, whom I choose to call God, finally convinced me that, okay, at least I can go talk to him. So I go up and I talk to a fellow there I'd actually had him in school when I graduated. He had just started teaching. His name's John Stanovich. He's here at Findlay now. He didn't know what I was about, but I told John what had happened. And I said, John, we don't have a course in chemical dependency here at Ohio Northern. We don't have a course on it because I looked in the catalog. I went to the library to try and find a catalog. They told me it was all online. That's how long it had been since I looked at the catalog. I said, we don't have a course. John says, no, we don't. And I says, I think we need one. And he says, yes, we do. Let's make it happen. So it took us about a year to put everything together. 10 years ago, this fall, I started to teach my first course down at Ohio Northern. I had 10 students. Didn't have a clue what I was doing, but knew what I wanted to share with them. The next quarter, we were on quarters. I think I had 30 students, and by spring quarter, we had 2 classes. We had like 60 students. Not about me, just students wanted to hear the message. They really did. Then John retired from Ohio Northern and came to the University of Findlay as they were starting a college of pharmacy here. So I kind of followed him up here. And the dean was a former professor of mine. So we talked about getting the course here. And I'm very pleased to say that the chemical dependency course was the first elective they actually approved here, the first actual elective. So we started teaching it here. Then I got a call from Northeast Ohio Medical College, which also has a pharmacy school. Hey, we heard about this course that you have. Let's talk about it. So I went up there. I thought, well, I'll tell them what it's about. They said, no, we want you to come here and teach it. Okay, that's school number 3. Then I was in Chicago a couple years after that, and I'm in the elevator. We're at a conference. I'm in the elevator. Another gentleman gets on. It's wonderful how God works sometimes. I've got my name tag on. It says Ohio Northern because they sent me. He looks at the name tag and he says, hey, what do you teach down there? And I told him. And he says, I'm from Toledo, and we don't have a course like that, and we need one. So now I'm at Toledo. That's number 4. And then school down the road, the newest kid on the block, Cedarville, they started a pharmacy school. Their dean had actually been my department head here at Findlay. He knew what we did. And so 3 years ago, when they were wanting electives, we added the course down there. And so now we're at 5 schools. We're at 5. I didn't put it, I don't think I put I did put the number on. We can't claim it yet. Can't claim school number 6 yet. But I do have a meeting next month with Ohio State. They are interested in having the course there as well. So y'all keep your fingers crossed that we'll add number 6 to the stable. I travel a lot. I live over in southeast Ohio. But that's all right. I love traveling and everything. I love sharing the message. And that kind of brings you a little bit up to date. Geez, is that all? Geez, I thought I'd talk longer than that. Well, there's a couple other things I want to do, and we're gonna do something different here in a minute. So yeah, 5 colleges of pharmacy. Here at the University of Findlay, we also have another class where we train students to go out and do lectures to schools on substance abuse awareness. And then we have a course like this one. So we are very here at Findlay, we are very much on the front lines in this battle with addiction. And we did a survey a couple of years ago, and I had a couple of students from here, and we contacted different pharmacists in recovery, and that's where we got that 38% figure for the suicide, which I think is just absolutely incredible. And unfortunately, sometimes they succeed. They really do. So it's kind of where I'm at today. I teach at 5 different schools, not all at once. We kind of vary it around. I mean, this semester I'm at Findlay and Ohio Northern, and then I go up to Neomed on Fridays, and then next semester I'm here in Cedarville and summer school at Toledo. So it's a great gig. I call it have syllabus will travel, but I just love doing it. For me, it's very very therapeutic. It absolutely is, because I get to share. But I tell the students, and I sometimes call them kids, and I apologize, but it's just what I do. You know, they help me more every time I come up and I share anything than I will ever help them. Just like tonight. I mean, you all have listened to me. You've heard what I had to say. You didn't get up and leave. Imagine that. You didn't get up and leave. You know, you help me more. You allow me to share. There's a saying in the rooms of AA and Alcoholics Anonymous. To keep sobriety, you have to give it away. And that is essentially what I try and do. It's a bit selfish because on my part it helps me stay clean and sober. I try to carry the message. You know, I dealt with a lot of issues as we continued in this journey of getting back and getting to this point. And you know, if you go to an AA meeting, and you can do that, open AA meetings, anybody can go. And I have students in this class that we teach here. They have to go to an AA meeting during the semester. And none of them want to do it, and they don't want to, but it's a great experience. And they all come back, you know, 95% are amazed at what they find and everything. But it's a great fellowship, and it's a great, wonderful thing, so I make them do that. But we talk about, in this course, I mean, we talk about, you know, why it's a disease. We look for signs and symptoms. We look at risk factors. We spend a day in treatment. We talk about what is it like when Lindsay Lohan goes to treatment. Okay, I feel sorry for her, but maybe she'll get it this time. You know, does she sit around the pool and drink virgin margaritas all day? Is there a secret handshake? No, it's very, very hard work, but it's also very, very rewarding as well. Then we talk about what it's like to sit before a board hearing. What do you have to do? What's it like with the drug screens, the monitoring, all this sort of thing? Drug screens for pharmacists, they're random. We're subject to them every day, and they are observed, which is kind of different too. I mean, they are actually, somebody watches you go. You just don't get the cup and, you know, go in the bathroom, bring it back out. No, somebody's got to, it has to be observed. And so there's all kinds of different consequences and things with this disease. Fortunately, a lot of pharmacists do get their license back, but unfortunately, a lot of relapse. It is a relapsing disease. So we try and share with the students here about, not that this is a magic bullet, okay, not that it's going to protect you, but trying to give them a lot of knowledge that they never had before. Certainly, I never had any of this knowledge. You know, when I started using drugs, I didn't see any big deal. It's like, that's kind of like, you know, they're my drugs. They're in the pharmacy. You know, but we try and educate them about all the different things. I want to tell you something else. When I handle how, like, you deal with publicity with this. I mean, I made the newspaper. I made the radio station. I would have made the TV, but we don't have any TV stations where I live, okay? But I was just so sure that everybody, they would read this newspaper article and I was this terrible, awful person. I found out most people don't really care. They really don't. I'm just not that important. I had a counselor tell me, and I struggled with this. He said, you know where that newspaper is going to end up tomorrow? It's going to be on the bottom of a bird cage. That's where it's going to be. Uh, and it proved true. I mean, and we talk about this in the course. We don't, you know, if we don't repeat the things that we did, if we treat our disease, then we're not going to make the newspaper. We're not going to make the TV station, the radio station. Okay? We're not going to do that. And so I would walk down the street and I would look the people in the eye. I can't control what you think. I can only control what I do. And I know if I don't use drugs or alcohol anymore, then, you know, I'm not going to make that name in the paper type thing. I mean, I thought everybody would cut that article out, put it on the refrigerator, a little spotlight up there, you know, this terrible pharmacist. You know, I actually get people still ask me, well, what store are you working at now? They don't know that I don't have a license anymore. You know, it's bizarre sometimes. But we talk about that. It's like, I do a lot of one-man historical portrayals now. I have about something I've developed in this. I do about 20 different characters, anything from a Titanic survivor to a hobo, everything in between. So now I get my name in the paper a lot. You know, he's doing this here, or he's doing this here. Tomorrow night tomorrow night I'm kind of excited. It's a new portrayal that I'm doing. It is Dr. Ron Jones, who was one of the actual doctors in the emergency room at Parkland Hospital the day that President Kennedy was brought in when he was assassinated. I know you're all too young, doesn't affect you. But for the rest of us, you know, we knew where we were and that kind of thing. And it's his story. And I'm really excited to do that and portray that. Again, nothing I would have ever done not in recovery and that kind of thing. So I get my name in the paper a lot. And my mother will call up, oh, you know, your name's in the paper again. And she will cut it out, put it on the refrigerator. Moms do that. And I always just think to myself, well, thank God it's not for taking drugs. It's not for taking drugs. We're going to go and do something else here, a little bit different. And to do that, I've got to step away for a couple of minutes. But before I go, I have to tell you a little bit of the rest of the story. Because, again, God has a real sense of humor sometimes. Remember back when I told you how I got caught the first time. Okay, I was working in this little grocery store, had a pharmacy. This pharmacist saved my life. He turned me in, saved my life. Okay. Well, later on, many, many, many years later, my wife went to work at the hospital, and this pharmacist was working at the hospital as well. And, well, my son goes to this hospital picnic, meets this young lady there, and her father is a pharmacist, whom I know. And long story short is they like each other. They start dating. They get engaged. They've been married for 4 years now. But my son married the daughter of the pharmacist who turned me in. You just never know. And we're all fine. We're all good. I mean, there's no animosity. There's no problems. He saved my life. He did what he had to do, absolutely. But again, sometimes you just never know what you're going to do. Now, okay, we're going to go just a little bit maybe different than what you normally do here, or you don't. I'm going to take just a break for a couple minutes because I've got to go get something else ready that I want you to see, okay? So just kind of hang loose, sit tight, talk amongst yourselves. It's over here. It'll take me a couple minutes. Then I'll be back because there's one more thing I want to share, and then we'll kind of open things up for questions, I think, and then we'll see if you have any questions or anything. So just bear with me for just a couple of minutes, and I'll leave this here. Mike, if there's anything else you want to say or tell them.
I'll put a shameless plug in for any AAA members here. AAA, not AA. We don't need any of that public unless you want to bring it forward. But get last month's magazine, open it up, thumb through it, and Ohio Historical Society has a picture of no one else than Chris doing his reenactment of, I think, a physician of Civil War era. So I'm thumbing through this. a number of things that I bring into the class occasionally that goes back to AA. And one thing that, whether you're an alcoholic or an opiate addict or whatever your drug of choice is, but the alcoholics, of course, they say, one drink is too many, talking about sobriety.
Hi, Michael, I am ready when you are.
One drink is too many, and 1,000 is not enough. I think that really captures the compulsion. All right, Chris, we're ready for you.
All right. Now you have to understand the rest of a little bit more of my story. Because see, let me grab this and you see when you steal drugs in the state of Ohio, that's a felony. It's a felony 4, by the way, felony 4. And you can do time for this. And I did. I did do time for this. I was arraigned the second time. The first time around, I got out of things. But the second time, I was actually charged with 3 counts of theft of drug. 3 counts of theft of drug, felony 4, is punishable by up to 1.5 years on each count. 1.5 years in prison on each count. Now we're talking 4.5 years. Now in that regard, I was a fortunate individual because the judge didn't let me off, but the judge sentenced me to 30 days on each count. So he sentenced me to 90 days in the jail, the county jail. He could have sent me to prison for 4.5 years, but he chose to be lenient and just gave me 90 days in the county jail. So I went to the county jail. I ended up only serving 60 days because I got out on an early release. They were extremely interesting 60 days. Not a place I thought I would ever go. I tell you, there are stories and stories about that I tell you, when I went in, I was very angry. I was very, very angry. Not at the idea that I was above the law. I didn't mean that. But at the time, I was trying to put together material to get the course started. I was in aftercare for treatment. I was trying to get my life back together. I was trying to have my board hearing. And I just didn't see what benefit would come of me sitting in jail for 90 days. I just couldn't understand that. Again, not that I didn't deserve it. I don't mean that. But about halfway through, about 30 days, I kind of had this spiritual awakening, if you will. And I realized that here was something that I could use in this course. So I began to pay attention. I began to look at things differently. And I began to ask questions. And I knew that I wanted to incorporate it into this course that I was going to teach. The idea that pharmacists are not above the law. Now there's many different stories, and I'm going to not dwell on a whole lot of them. By the way, this is the actual prison suit. These are the real handcuffs. These are the real deal. Not the kind that you get in the adult bookstore. No, so I've been told. I don't know that. I don't know that. Please, don't know that. Strike that from the, no. These are the real deal. I have a very good friend who works at the county jail where I was incarcerated. She's one of the corrections officers, the COs. And we have a very unique relationship, do Debbie and I. For she was there the first day that I come in. Okay, she was there. And she's being very nice to me. Now, mind you, I could use nice at this point. But I'm thinking, why is she being so nice to me? She's telling me it's going to be a bump in the road. You're going to get through this kind of thing. Well, it turns out, I found out the next day, that her husband was a pharmacist. So she was taking care of me in that regard. But again, like everything else, there's more to the story. Oh yeah, there's more. I have a lot of more to the stories. Not only was her husband a pharmacist, but as I was coming in to do my time for stealing drugs, he was going into treatment for substance abuse. He'd been taking drugs as well. And so she kind of kept an eye on me in there, and I would tell her about treatment, and it turned out to be a very good thing for both of us. So by the way, I put this on, and I come into class once every semester, okay? So I go back to the jail, and I borrow this and the handcuffs. I'll walk into the jail, and they all, oh, must be jail suit day at the university, and they'll go and get me one. And I will tell you this, it is the hardest thing that I do. It is the hardest thing I do to put this on, but it is one of the most important lectures that we do. It really is. Now, I put this on and I come back up here, and I tell you, it was very hard for my family when I was in jail. Very difficult, especially for my wife. I tried to prepare her for the idea, but it was tougher. There were some days it was so emotional. She couldn't come to the jail when we had visitation. And visitation was like, I'm on one side of the wall with a glass window between us and a phone. That was visitation. Some days she couldn't come, and I understood that. My mother came to see me once in jail. I did not want her to come do that, but mothers will do that. Okay, she came. I would not let them bring my son. I didn't want them to see me in jail. Some interesting stories in there, some scary times. As soon as you go in, of course, immediately, what'd you do? What'd you do? What'd you do? That's the first thing you get asked. And I told them I was a pharmacist and I stole drugs. And they thought that was all way cool. They really did. And they go, you worked in a pharmacy and you could have anything you wanted? And I went like, no, that's what got me here. I couldn't have everything that I wanted, and everything. But scary sometimes, and at other times sad. But it was all part of this, and enabled me to do this. But like I said, it's hard to walk back in there and get this jail suit and that kind of thing. But it's very important that I do that. Now, like I told you, these are the real handcuffs. They're the real deal. But unlike when I was in there, I do have the key. All right, I do have the key. Rachel, would you come down and help me get out of these things? Because I always test the key before I put these on. Imagine going down to the Findlay Police Department dressed like this and say, hey, can you let me out of here? I don't think so. All right. There we are. All right, now let's see. Just either one of those. Turn it one way or another, and it will either turn, and if it doesn't, go the other way. There it goes. She's done that before. No. Okay. Thank you. I'll get the other one. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am not Houdini. All right. There, that feels better with them. But now, okay, now I'm going to tell you, and this point is really, really very important, because now I'm going to swear you all to secrecy that you didn't see or don't know about Jail Suit Day. I do this. When we get done with the presentation in the class, I ask this question. I say, how many of you honestly knew, and it doesn't matter, but how many of you honestly knew that I was going to walk in here in a jail suit? Because they don't, the topic on the lecture is just consequences. It doesn't say anything about jail. So I say, how many honestly knew? It doesn't matter, but be honest, I want to know. And almost never does anybody hold up their hand. And I say that's good because I swear them to secrecy then. I say, go out, tell other students about the course, but don't tell them about Jail Suit Day, because it really does spoil the effect if you already know. And very few of them ever know that I'm. But now I'm finding something kind of neat, and it's kind of neat when I ask this question. Now a few more of them are like holding up their hand like, yeah, we knew this was coming sometime. And I will ask them, I said, did you talk to one of the other students who had it like last semester? And they go, no. Now they're working with pharmacists. They're preceptors who had the course, and the preceptors will tell them this is going to be coming up. And that's kind of neat because then the preceptor who had the course remembered and it's in their brain. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that, you know. And so you are all sworn to secrecy now. You can't tell anybody about Jail Suit Day because actually, again, you know, and I know that one here is you knew I was. Did you know I was going? You didn't know I was going to do that. Yeah, he did. He's had the course. Actually, I'm scheduled to do this next week with the students here, and the week after at the students at Ohio Northern. So consequences usually come up right before the end of the semester. So we'll be doing this down there. Again, this is not necessarily something that I like to do, but it is important. It really is. So, all right. I'm going to slip out of this real quick because I hate wearing this thing. So give me one more minute. It's easier to take off and everything. And then I'm going to open the floor up for questions, and we'll finish out with questions or not or whatever. So, Michael, you're back on for just a minute. Now let me get out of this thing. But I'm trying to figure out where the heck am I going to change this thing in here. And there's just barely room to turn around in there, but I made it work. So I'll be right back.
All right, we're back on again. Anyone needs a potty break, this would be a great time too. Yeah, we did. Oh, this is high school. Yeah. I was not quite that high, but I was pretty serious. Anything else on anyone's mind? Well, you know, Chris and I went opposite sides of the state, and so we really didn't connect. I came back to Northern, and I can remember that day that he was up visiting with John Stanovich. And John came in later and said, because I taught a course in drug abuse that dealt with, like what Chris does here, taking pharmacy students to go out and talk to middle and high school students. Actually, we came to Finley a few times, both at Donnell and then also the high school. And John goes, is that going to infringe upon what you do? And I go, absolutely not, because this is what happens to the professionals, not prevention at the early level. So it's been, but then we reconnected at that point, and the rest is history. It's been very nice. We've gone to a couple meetings together. Me and Adam would go, and my son would go, and they're about the same age, and so we had these parallel lives almost. It's been a joy to make that successful piece, and to know how somebody is really giving back to society. That is probably something that drives me more than anything, to want to make sure that naloxone is embraced, to try to save the people that fell down one more time. Relapse is a very, very redemption might be just around the corner, but we've got to keep people alive in order to get to that point. And Chris is a prime example of how you can put your life back on track.
Well,
You know, from
you
the
know,
depths of
yeah, you know. And I don't. We have talked in all kinds of things, but I don't know if you ever heard the whole story before. I don't know if you've actually. You ever sit in on the whole? He might not ask me back. I don't know. He's heard the whole story now. All right, now comes the part that's the easy questions. Please, anything is. I know that everything is fair game. By the way, I mean I will answer anything about recovery. So.
cumulatively, how many pharmacy students do you think you discussed this with?
Over the 10 years in the different schools, it would be at least 1,000 by now, probably, that we've reached. And I am blessed to say I have not gotten a call from one of them saying that they had a problem. I've gotten calls from students wanting help for somebody else, and we've steered them in the right direction. I've got many of those, and I delight in those. But again, I tell them it's not a magic bullet. And we talk about, you know, I asked them, I don't ask them, but I said, think about it. Do you have family members who are active? Are they alcoholic? Are they addicts? And if they are, then your risk factor went up, because there is a genetic factor to this. Somewhere in this crazy mind of mine, there's a gene that makes me an addict. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's at. I wish it was gone. But no, I don't, because then I get to do this. I do. But there's some. So this puts, if you've got a history of this disease in your family, you're more at risk. Now, I tell them, now if you do, don't run down to the dean's office and change your major, because then she'll get mad at me. But that tells you have to be extra careful. If you've got some of this history of this disease in your family, then you've got to be extra careful. But I do have that genetic makeup. And my wife, God bless her, does not. And we had this conversation. What I have to tell you, this illustrates the point, okay? A couple of years ago, she had some shoulder problems, and she got a prescription for Vicodin, a very mild tranquilizer, to relax the muscles in her shoulder. It was a half a tablet every 4 to 6 hours, a half a tablet. And she took a few doses, and it didn't help the shoulder, but it made her feel very loopy, very fuzzy, kind of just out of it, drowsy, didn't like the feeling at all. So she took about 3 doses, and she threw them away. Broke my heart when she threw them away. I'm an addict, but but then she looked at me and she said, "And how can you think this is fun?" And I said, "Your brain is different than mine." To me, if I'd have had that, a half every 4 to 6, I was thinking more like 4 to 6 every half. That would have made more sense to me. I mean, my brain is just wired differently. So we try and get that across, but everybody just has to be careful. So yeah, about 1,000, I bet, by now, over the 10 years in the 5 schools. So what else? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, it is 90. The question is, the 90 Ambien tablets. Great question. I've never had that one before. Thank you. 90 tablets is very close to the lethal dose, and probably in a lot of people would be. All right. In addition to all those prayers that saved my life, here was the other thing that saved my life. Because I am an addict, my tolerance was so high that was not a lethal dose for me. That's, in quote, a normal person, what we all call you're all normal people, earth people, that's what I call you. I mean, that would be close to the lethal dose, and it probably would have done it. Me, because of my high tolerance, it did not. I have found since, if I really wanted to have done it, I should have taken it with, a fifth of Jack Daniels, and that would have done it and everything. But again, I'm glad I did there and everything. I do not have, I told you about the box cutter. I have no idea to this day. Once I took that Ambien, I was in a blackout. I don't know. It's scary. I don't know if I went out. So I didn't take a box cutter with me. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if I went out and bought it and then come back and slit my wrist. I don't know. I've thought about it 100 times, more than that. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. And again, I was serious. I was one of those, but I didn't know about cutting your wrist. I cut them the wrong way, which is, I'm glad, but again, I was serious. There was no doubt about it. The world was better off without me. So, okay. Other questions? Come on, somebody's got to have some questions. I mean, heaven's sakes. Yes, please.
Do you know how the percentage of doctors that they have substance abuse problems compares to the percentage of pharmacists?
Yes, I do know that. I do know that. They come in at about pharmacists are 1 out of 6. Doctors come in somewhere between 1 out of 8, 1 out of 9. They're close, but they're a little lower, and a lot of that has to do with access. Okay, I mean, who has more access to drugs than a pharmacist? We work in the candy store. Okay, they're everywhere. Okay, and that's what I tell my students. Okay, you're working in the pharmacy. You got a sore throat. The pharmacy, take some amoxicillin. You'll feel, okay. Nobody's going to get upset about that. But don't do it, because it's just a short hop. You think it wouldn't be, but case in point, you heard how easy it was to take those 2 Percodan. It was a short hop for me. The first pharmacist I ever worked for, my preceptor, he owned the drugstore. It was his philosophy, they're my drugs. So he would take several different things that were controlled. And I saw him do it. Now, I'm not blaming him. He passed away before he ever got in trouble. But at the same time, it set a pattern in my head, hey, you just kind of do that kind of thing. So docs, it's about 1 out of 8, 1 out of 9 because of the access. Nurses are right up with pharmacists. They're about 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 because, again, it's all about the access. It's all about the access.
Chris, I just want to
Yeah,
amplify a little bit
yeah,
Barb's question.
yeah.
Within the various specialties of medicine, which one specialty do you think is at particular risk?
We'll see if we agree. Psychiatrist.
Not a bad guess.
Not a bad guess.
One that has more access to more powerful drugs than
We'll see if we agree. I know where he's going with this. So, anybody got an idea?
Anyone? Yes,
Anesthesiologist. I mean, and they got the heavy hitting stuff. And so they are way up here, when it comes to risk. And they are also, some of the hardest to treat. Some of the hardest are the anesthesiologists and the surgeons that get impaired because they have this God complex. They really do. They think nobody can tell them anything. I was in treatment when there was an anesthesiologist just finishing up, and he got out of treatment and went back, and he went back to work too soon. Within a month, he had relapsed and nearly died. But yeah, they've got this heavy hitting stuff, kind of thing. Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Okay. So
Just the one, yes,
All
yes.
right. And so what career path did you
He's a teacher. He's a teacher. No interest in pharmacy whatsoever. No, not going to do that. He actually teaches French. Okay, he teaches French of all things. And his wife is also a teacher. They're both teachers down in North Carolina. But he knows he has to be extra careful. Right. This was a kid that had just won in junior high when everything came crashing down for me the first time. This was a kid who had just won the DARE contest. He wrote the best essay. And then he's got to come home and find out that his dad is a... And I will tell you this, and again, it was very difficult for him the second time. He was in school, and it was very difficult for him with the suicide attempt. And I'll leave it at that since we're filming, but it's difficult. It's difficult. I will tell you this. This is another thing we do in the class. I try and get a spouse to come in, a spouse of a recovering pharmacist, and talk to the students. The lecture is called What About the Family? Because we do all this other thing, but sometimes we don't talk about what about the family. So I try and get a spouse. My wife will do it. She has done it. It's not her favorite thing to do. It's very difficult for her to relive some of this. So we actually made a video several years ago where she talks to the students. We set a little, mini cam up in the dining room, and she's sitting there and she talks. So if I can't find a student, I will play her video. Okay. I've never seen it. I've never watched it. I don't know what she tells them. I don't want to watch it. I turn it on and I leave the room. It's her hour. Same way, whatever spouse shows up, I leave the room. But we have to address that because I didn't care. I didn't care what I did to my family. I just wanted to feel good. And that's the way it is with, anybody suffering from this disease. And I talk to parents and so much, and, their son or their daughter is, in treatment, or they've had a problem. I'm not talking pharmacies. I'm talking about just in general. And they'll go, don't they realize how much they're hurting us? And I come back and I tell them, we don't care. We don't want to, but we don't care because those drugs and that alcohol, they change the way I think. They change the part of my brain that I'm a nice guy. I don't lie, I don't cheat, and I don't steal. But when I take drugs, I do because it changes the way I think. And so I know that, that kind of. So, I talk to suicide survivors, and we do that because I am one. And just the other day at the hospital where my wife works, one of the nurses committed suicide. and everybody's obviously pretty upset. And my wife heard some of the people talking, and it's like, well, I'm just so angry at her that she would do that. And I said, you go back and you tell those people that, you know what, her thinking was probably, and you can't put yourself in it. I know what my thinking was. My thinking was not that I'm going to hurt somebody or that I'm going to leave this gap or it's going to be this trouble. I'm thinking, at this point in my thinking, they're going to be better off without me. That's what a lot of suicide attempts, we care about our family, we just don't want them to go through stuff. So we see ourselves as a burden or this awful person, and we just reach this point that, oh, they'll be better off without me. So, but yeah, he teaches French, and really concerned. I talked to him a night or two ago after everything that was in Paris, and he had a group of students over there this summer. He usually takes a group of 8th graders to France every year, during the summer. He teaches at this charter school in North Carolina. They got all kinds of money. The school, not him. But he said, I don't know if we'll go back probably won't go back this year because, parents won't want to send their kids, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's the career. He and his wife are both teachers there and everything. So, more questions? Yes, sir, please.
What could you tell me about Seroquel, like what it's prescribed for, what kind of side effects there are with it?
Okay.
Anything like that?
Yeah. Michael helped me out a little bit. I've been out of the practice a long time. Antidepressant, right? I mean, an antidepressant is primarily what it's used for, treat some other conditions. It's been too long and but I will tell you this, it is not an addictive substance. It is, and we get caught up, and I use the term mood altering as opposed to truly addicting. It's kind of what my term that I use. Seroquel is not addictive. It's an antidepressant. Helps a lot of people, all right? I'll be honest, I have had rounds of, and not lately, but rounds of antidepressants in sobriety, especially early on. Depression early on in recovery is almost the norm, okay? And a lot of recovering people, they don't want to take one of these substances because, I don't want to get, well, it's not mood altering. I mean, it is mood altering, but it's not addictive. So it's perfectly safe for a recovering individual to take an antidepressant if the need is there. Because if we don't treat the depression and it continues to build up, what will happen, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, I've been sort of close, but what will happen is you feel so bad that you start thinking, well, the only thing that really made me feel good were the drugs. And if I'm going to feel this bad the rest of my life, what the heck, I'm just going to chuck it and take drugs. So we got to treat that depression. Mike, you got anything more on the side effects or anything? I mean, again, I've been out of the practice a long time.
And by the way, I'm talking more about
Yeah.
it's not being prescribed, just people taking it.
Just people taking it. Okay. Probably going to see a lot of, if it's not prescribed, a lot of drowsiness, a lot of disorientation, that kind of thing.
Because it competes with the reuptake for some of the neurotransmitters, it can actually have some additive effects with amphetamines and cocaine because you're flooding the system with these other biogenic amines, norepinephrine and dopamine. So you can get an escalation of some of the abuse drugs when you use some of these reuptake inhibitors. And was that in part maybe what you were thinking about? Why would you use Seroquel if it really doesn't give you a buzz, but it
Yeah.
can amplify the buzz from some other drugs?
And you're talking about if, like just taking it or that, there is this trend, and we've discovered this when we go out and talk to the students or when we do the research and prepare the programs. There's this trend with, I guess, more like with high school students right now called farming parties. And they go to their parents' or their grandparents' medicine cabinets, and they just take some of whatever is there, and you bring it to the party, and you throw it in a big bowl, and then you reach in and you mix it all around, and then everybody comes up and grabs something and takes it. And it just scares the heck out of you, because you don't know what's in there. I mean, might be something like estrogen, which won't do a darn thing. But I mean, you put together a couple of antidepressants and throw in a narcotic, and boy, you're talking just, it's really scary. It's like, and again, the thinking is, well, it came out of the medicine cabinet, it's okay. They have this concept, if it's a prescription drug, it's okay, it's safe. It's not like we're getting it off the street. It's a real drug, so it's okay. So we see a lot of that. Yes, sir.
This is a question for both you and Dr. Mills. Are you guys aware of the literature supporting psychedelic drugs treating addiction? And if you are, what are your thoughts?
I'll go first, and then I have just seen a little bit of that. The psychedelic drugs are not addictive per se. They are not physically addictive, okay, like a narcotic. All right, we don't get into withdrawal tolerance and that kind of thing. And they're kind of, all I know is, and I'm just going to speak from my own point of view, if it did anything outside the norm, okay, for me personally, I just want more of it. I mean, even if it wasn't, quote, addictive, if it changed my perspective, I would probably want more of it. So it would scare the heck out of me. I mean, for example, I am being in recovery, and I have to be extremely careful with what I take even over the counter. For example, I can't take decongestants because those are a mild stimulant. I can't take Benadryl. Benadryl's an antihistamine, but it is, because it is first generation, it is a little bit mood altering. And it will, now we don't have any Benadryl addicts out there, but I mean, but I can't take that. I take second generation like Claritin, because the non-drowsiness ones. But anything for me being in recovery and a psychedelic, I mean, that would just be, I'd just probably want more of it. Same way with marijuana. I mean, we had all that with the election and all that. And I mean, all the stuff, I honestly, I've never smoked marijuana. I've tried everything else in the pharmacy and then some, but I mean, I never smoked marijuana. I just never needed to. So I don't know what it does, but I do know it is a terrible gateway drug for youngsters. So now, Dr. Milks, what?
Yeah, Chris, maybe, or Colin, maybe you can repeat. Ibogaine was one that I think a South African herb, and they were doing some studies that suggested that addicts taking this psychedelic could walk away from their other addiction while they were using it. And I know there are some people using the cannabinoids that suggest they can walk away from some of their other addictive substances. But I don't know that clinically any of those studies showed a statistical benefit. So it's mostly anecdotal, and I've not read enough on that recently. Maybe you've got some information.
I was just seeing mostly psilocybin and LSD were the two
Yeah.
that I was reading about.
And I can't speak to any of the articles that they were suggesting that those were useful. But the fact that cannabinoids and this other hallucinogenic drug also had some effect, there must be some linkage there.
And not to go on, but, I mean, it would just awaken the reward pathways for me. I mean, when I relapsed, that's the way this disease works. I had 7.5 years sobriety, 7.5, 8 years. When I relapsed, I started right from the point where I left off 7.5 years ago. I did not go back and start over, like, one, and it's built back up again. No, it was like right there. I think it was like 4 Vicodin right off the bat. That's what it took to give me the high, same as when I'd stopped 4.5 years, or 7.5 years ago. It does not go back. The old timers in AA, they told me that, and I didn't believe them, but believe it. I mean, I had to go out and find for myself, but let's take one more question, and then maybe you need to finish up with the clickers. And one more. Anybody got one more? Rachel, yes.
So we talked about how you relapse and how every day you're still always in recovery.
Yeah.
And that you avoid other stimulants and stuff
Yeah.
to trigger it again.
Except for caffeine. But yeah, okay, go ahead.
What's it like on a daily basis? Do you
Great question. Great question. Awareness every day. Okay, awareness, but not a battle. Not a battle. Doing what I do, teaching this course, I kind of stay more focused than a lot of people in recovery. I mean, I know people in recovery, same amount as they haven't told their story for years. And I tell my story, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a year. Most people don't. Not a battle, an awareness. I work the steps. I get up in the morning, and I do a firm believer in this idea of one day at a time. I will get up and I will say literally, just for today, I'm not going to pick up a drug or a drink. We'll worry about tomorrow, because I can't control tomorrow. I can't change what happened yesterday. But I can make that decision just for today. And then that works for me. Now, people say, when you go to a wedding and everybody's drinking alcohol, is that difficult for you, or is that, no, I can't expect everybody else. I'm a little jealous. You can have a glass of wine. Me, I'd want the whole bottle. But I mean, it doesn't bother me when people drink around me. That's just not for me. I mean, and I like it when I have people around me that know that I'm in recovery and that kind of thing. I mean, I went to Las Vegas this summer for a whole week at a conference. We did a continuing education program. Las Vegas, what a place for somebody in recovery, But it's neat because the people that I go with, they all know that I'm in recovery. They all know that I don't care if they have a drink. I don't care, they don't, oh, is it okay if we have a drink? They just do it. And I like that. But it's kind of cool that they all know, because we'll be ordering and, the waiter will take the drinks and they'll get to me and somebody will go, oh, he'll have a Pepsi. They'll just go right, they'll just know what I'm going to do. And that's kind of cool. So no, definitely I have to be aware of it every day. I can't forget it. I have to treat my disease. But it's not a battle. I would not call it a battle. Some days maybe, but most of the time not a battle, just an awareness. Great question. Thank you. Well, yes.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Yes.
On the marijuana and the gateway.
Yeah.
Probably within 24 hours after marijuana being defeated here,
Yes.
they announced that cannabis oil kills 9 types of cancer.
Right.
So it does have medical benefits.
Oh, I will not argue with that a bit. Certainly.
As far as the gateway, the gate is off the hinges. The gate is smashed. I think, we ought to legalize marijuana and eradicate the rest of the stuff that is destroying this nation, the heroin, the crack, the meth, and these thousands and thousands of pills with thousands and thousands of side effects. Keep your children away from it. But, I mean, Colorado is now paying for universities with their multi-millions of tax.
Well, it's a moneymaker. I won't deny that. We'll agree to disagree. I mean, I respect your opinion on it. It just scares the heck out of me personally. I just know too many horror stories of people who started. I agree, let's get rid of everything. But I personally, and again, I just don't, everybody says alcohol is legal. I just don't think we need to add one more thing that's going to cause more problems. But, I respect your opinion on it. And we'll leave it at, it wouldn't work for me. Let's leave it like that. It scares the heck out of me. So, but thank you. Thank you for the comment. And thank you for expressing your opinion, because it's a great country. We can do that. We can express our opinions.
Well, and it all started with William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So, all right.